Hello guys, welcome to Hook with Anime. Let's begin. Chapter 4. Giving in. First, I would like to thank all those WHO reviewed. I hate to admit but I am a little self-conscious since this is my second fanfic. Next, I would like to clear up a few things I wasn't too clear on. Ichigo's mask. Sorry, it isn't his hollow one, just something like a black ski mask, or maybe a ninja mask. I will eventually get around to making it more clear in the story. Also, I apologize if I spelled any name wrong or places. I get most of the names from fansubs, and we all know how no two fansub groups are the same. And Ichigo's form-fitting Shinigami robes. Yes, they're his Bankai robes. But he isn't in Bankai. I will have to alter his Bankai a little, but not too much. Sorry if this upsets anyone, but think about it. He looks much better than with the ragtag ones every else wears. Let's see. I plan on adding a lemon or too, but just finding the right place and not making the characters move too fast. I also hate Renji and Orihime, so they will probably suffer in later chapters. Not much, mind you, cause I am not that cruel, but they will. I had to tone down both characters' arrogance a little since I have read a lot of fanfics that make them out to be assholes. WHO just decide to ravish each other. I think it is better this way. Disclaimer. I do not own Bleach. Ichigo kneels down and opens his arms to give her a hug. He holds her tight and looks to the Shinigami, who is looking at him with a sort of shocked look. Ichigo. The young girl says, rubbing against his chest. Don't be mad at her, she is really nice. She was going to let me hold her sword just like you do. I bet I can hold hers. It looks a lot lighter than yours. Why are you wearing your mask? You have such a pretty face. I am wearing it cause she is here. You know I can't let her see my face, he replies. Oh, then can I see it tomorrow? Please, please, please can I, she begs. Maybe, you know I can't promise anything, he replies.
Listening to what the young girl says, his eyes begin to soften and he doesn't feel angry anymore. She wasn't going to send her. He looks back up to the Shinigami and sees something like adoration in her eyes. Not the sappy kind. The kind that makes him think the next words to come out her mouth will be, "That's so cute." He shakes it off and releases the girl.
The young girl doesn't even notice that he is looking at the Shinigami. Do you know this girl? She sure is pretty, and she is even dressed like you, and she smells good too.
With that last part, he sees a blush come up on the Shinigami's cheeks. She looks really cute when she blushes. Did I just say that? What is wrong with me? Ichigo. The Shinigami asks, "Is that your name?" Ichigo turns to the young girl in front of him and fixes her with a scowl that immediately softens when she looks him in the eyes with her hand to her mouth, giving him the puppy dog look. He knows he can't be mad at her, especially after she says, "Sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just really excited to see you."
It's okay, Squirt, he says as he runs his hand through the little girl's hair. He stands and the little girl immediately grabs onto his pants leg. He looks down at her while she is beaming up at him. He can't help but smile. It makes him glad he is wearing his mask. He looks up to the beautiful Shinigami girl who still has a slight blush on her face. "Yes, my name is Ichigo. May I have yours?"
Rukia is stunned by his beautiful voice. She wants to hear him speak again. So she walks closer and sticks out her hand. Rukia Kuchiki. Ichigo listens to her voice and decides it is quite beautiful when she isn't yelling. He reaches out his hand to clasp hers as he looks into her eyes. He can't look away. She has the most gorgeous, deep, violet eyes he has ever seen. He feels they can see into his soul. He knows he should look away but he can't. He feels how soft her hand is in his own. How small compared to his large hands and so soft compared to his hard and calloused. Rukia can't help but be drawn into his soft amber eyes. She can tell that he has seen things that she hasn't. She feels as though she is looking into his soul. She can see every emotion he has buried. She feels trapped but doesn't want to escape. When his hand touches hers, she feels the strength coursing through him and knows the calluses are from constant battles and hours upon hours of practice. Ichigo doesn't know how long they stood like that, but the little girl was growing impatient. She yanked on his robe, pulling him down. They break eye contact while he tries to get his balance. Rukia immediately blushes and looks away.
"Hey Squirt, what was that for?" he asks the little soul while getting his balance. "You were staring at each other for a long while. It seemed like you forgot about me. You promised to never forget about me, she cries with a sad pout.
Don't worry, I will never forget about you. But I have to go now. I will stop by tomorrow with some more flowers, okay? He says while kneeling down next to the girl. He pulls her into a hug. Okay, but you can't forget. I get lonely when you don't visit, she says as he releases her. Then instantly happy, can you bring some cat food? There is a black cat that keeps walking through. I want to feed it so it will stay a little longer. Then it would be like I had a cat. Of course, I will bring some cat food. You just be good, okay, and remember what I said about monsters. If they show up and I am not around, where do you run? He asks, smiling to the little girl. I run down that street for 2 blocks, then turn left, then I run for 3 blocks, then I turn right for 1 block and wait for help to arrive. She says proudly. See, I can remember. That's good, Squirt. Well, I have to go now. He looks up to Rukia. Care to join me?
Rukia smiles and nods. She has such a beautiful smile. He doesn't ever want to see that smile fade or the shining of her eyes. Okay, bye, Ichigo, bye pretty lady, the little soul says. Rukia follows behind Ichigo until he stops and waits for her to catch up. Suddenly he tenses and she stops, just standing there looking at him until she understands why. Her hollow alarm is going off. She looks at it to see where the hollow is. Before she can get the coordinates, Ichigo turns to her.
Come on, let's go kill us a hollow. It's not too far away, should just take a second or two to get there. Oh wait, you don't know Flash Step, do you? Ichigo asks. Rukia looks down and slowly shakes her head. She hears something and looks up to see Ichigo bent down in front of her, offering his back. Hop on, don't worry, I ain't gonna drop you. Besides, we can get there faster, he says, looking over his shoulder at her. He sees the look of surprise on her face and he grins. He really likes wearing his mask. He can show almost all his emotions and no one notices. She stands there for a moment before she climbs on. He uses his hands to hold her legs and she wraps her arms around his shoulders. She instantly loves the way his back feels against her. Her hands grip his shoulders tightly and she can feel his muscles shudder under her touch. She breathes in his scent as she leans her head against his shoulder. His scent fills her lungs and she doesn't think she can get enough. When his hands grasp her thighs, she lets out a slight gasp. Sorry, but I am going to have to move my hands a little since we are going to be moving pretty fast, he says with a blush. Rukia also blushes but nods her head against his back. She feels his hands working their way back slowly. She feels his fingers grip firmer into her inner thighs. She wants him to keep moving his hands but doesn't dare to say it. What is wrong with me? I haven't even seen this guy's face and I am just met him a few minutes ago. Why do I feel this way? The next thing she knows, they are moving faster than she has ever moved before. She can't even make out the buildings as they pass them. All she sees is the blur of passing lights. She cuddles against his back, breathing him in, and closes her eyes.
Before she realizes it, they are stopped. Her eyes pop open when she hears the holler of the hollow. Ichigo slowly lowers her to her feet and stands up.
Okay, he's all yours. Don't take too long, there is another one across town, he says. Rukia didn't want to get off of his back. It was warm and firm. He smelled so good when she breathed him in. Once he put her on the ground, she immediately wanted to jump back on and breathe it in some more. But she turned to the hollow and tried to focus on the task at hand. She wanted to impress this man. Rukia drew her Zanpakuto, Dance Soda no Shirayuki. Her blade started to glow a brilliant white and she could feel Ichigo's eyes on her.
Second dance. White ripple, a wall of ice shot out from in front of her, cutting the hollow in half. She sheathed her weapon and turned around to look at Ichigo's face. She couldn't tell, but she thought he was smiling. Without saying a word, he turned around and bent down to allow her access to her back. She climbed and immediately held him tight, and they were gone.
She killed 4 hollows riding on his back, going to each. After the 5th, he finally spoke. That is very nice. I don't think I have ever seen such a beautiful attack before, and you execute it perfectly. You are quite amazing, Mrs. Kuchiki, he says, bringing a blush to her cheeks. Rukia turns away to hide her blush, then says, It's Ms. Kuchiki. So when am I going to get to see you purify some hollows? Well, if you want to see that, then you had better hop on. He replies. She turns around and once again gets on his powerful back. As he stands, she feels his fingers move back just a smidgen more and then they are off again. This time it is a little longer ride and she takes this chance to close her eyes and breathe him in. She doesn't think she can get enough. She loves the feel of his broad back and pulls herself closer to it. Ichigo feels her pressed against him and can't stop smiling. This girl is amazing.
As soon as he stops, he lowers her onto the ground, then turns to her. Now you get to see me kill some hollows. She can hear the laughter in his voice. She looks and there are 3 hollows chasing an old man through the streets.
Ichigo rushes to the closest one and quickly carves a slice into its mask. Before it even starts to dissolve, he is onto the next one, cutting off both its arms then its head. Now it is just the one left, but it is a flyer. She can't look away. His speed and power are amazing. No wonder he was able to kill that Manos. He is definitely captain level. When he is fighting, his Reitsu just seems to pour from his body. It is so powerful it almost makes her weak. She ignores that and just looks on bewildered.
Rukia prepares to grab her sword since she can use her dances against flying enemies too when she is surprised to see Ichigo disappear, then reappear standing directly in front of the hollow, standing on air as though he was standing on solid ground. Then he uses his Zanpakuto to slice the enemy apart before returning to stand right in front of Rukia. He isn't even breathing hard.
Ichigo just stands there looking into her eyes. He so badly wants to take off his mask and show her his face, but he knows that could bring a lot of trouble his way and hers. If no one can identify him, then he can still go about his normal life. He is drawn to those beautiful violets, but quickly looks away.
So what do you think? He asks, more smug than he intended.
It was fantastic. You fight like a berserker. Go directly in for the kill as if nothing else matters. She says, complimenting him.
Thanks. I am always told I am too reckless, so it is nice to hear someone else's opinion. He says while rubbing the back of his head.
Who keeps telling you that? She asks, thinking this might be a chance to some information. My D, he says, stopping himself. I almost said my dad. I have to be careful around her. I might let my guard down too much. No one. Rukia scoffs. What do you mean no one? You were clearly going to say something. She says, feeling kind of hurt that he won't share anything with her.
Sorry, but I can't tell you. Don't get me wrong. I want to tell you, but I can't, at least not yet. He says, looking at her for some sort of response. When she nods her head, he steps closer and says, you know there are still plenty of hollows out there, shall we?
He turns and bends down, exposing his back to her. She quickly gets back on it and is ready to go. Oh no, did I react too quickly? Is he going to say something to embarrass me? Should I get off and just try to keep up? That would never happen. Ichigo smiles and is quickly using his flash step heading to the next hollow.
When dawn begins to show, Ichigo looks over at Rukia. They are sitting on a slanted roof looking out toward the sun. She was close to him but not close enough to touch. He wanted to so bad.
He finally breaks the silence. I guess I should be taking you back now. I'll drop you off a few blocks from your partner.
Rukia yawns and nods her head silently. When they arrive at the spot, she doesn't want him to leave just yet. She feels compelled to stay near him. She starts searching her brain for any excuse that would make him stay. Finally she relents. Will I see you tonight, Ichigo? She asks in the sweetest voice he had ever heard. He takes a quick breath, then turns to her, looking in her eyes but trying not to stare so he won't be trapped in them. As long as you are alone you will, he says with smiling eyes. He walks over to her, getting as close as he can without pressing their bodies together. What am I doing? I have never acted like this. Why did I get so close? Why isn't my body reacting to my demands? Close your eyes, he tells her, and she feels compelled to obey. What is going on? Why is my body acting this way? She feels his hand covering her closed eyes, then feels his breath against her cheek. She stands frozen, waiting to see what he is planning to do. She doesn't know him very well, but she feels as though she can trust him.
Then she feels his lips against her cheek. She stiffens and holds her breath. His lips feel so soft on her cheek. She can feel his breath on her cheek and her neck. She dreads the feeling of him pulling his lips away, then removes his hand covering her eyes. She blinks, seeing his black mask covering his face. She is unable to move.
See you tonight, he says with a wink as turns and disappears.
It takes Rukia a few minutes to pull herself together. Once she feels she is recovered, she runs back to Urahara's as fast as she can. She gets to the door and tries calm down. He kissed me. He kissed me. Yes, it was on the cheek, but it was amazing. She finally gets her find under control and pushes the blush down, then walks into the house. The first thing she sees is Urahara sitting at the table, his cat in his lap, and he is wearing a huge smile.
So how was your mystery man? He asked, trying to hide his knowing look. Rukia's blush comes back full force and she just runs to her room. For the next 3 nights they were together. He watched her fight, she watched him fight, and they fought together. He was really amazed at her Kido abilities and was quite impressed, so he made sure she knew it. At the end of each night he gave her a kiss on the cheek. He caught her once trying to peek, but he threatened her with not coming the following night if she tried that again. The kiss on the cheek became one of the things she most looked forward to. She had told Urahara and Kion about their battles together, but she left out his name in the wonderful goodbye kisses. She so much wanted him to kiss her on the lips. She knew he did too, cause he would always hover there before placing his soft lips on her cheek. It was the most stimulating thing she had ever felt, and she wanted to feel it again and again. At the end of the 4th night he informed her he wouldn't be around for the next night. "Oh, but why not?" she asked. "I am really sorry, but I have some personal business to take care of tomorrow. I will make it up to you sometime. I promise," he says. "You always keep your promises, don't you?" she states. Her pulls her close and covers her eyes. "Yes, I do." She closes her eyes and subconsciously tilts her head, exposing her neck. She doesn't even notice she did it until she feels his hot, ragged breath upon her neck.
She doesn't know what to do. If she pulls back now, that would be kind of an insult to him. And she really wants him to place his soft lips against her skin. She wants to feel them all over her body. She doesn't know why she feels this way, she never has before. But the urge is just too great. She can tell he is fighting a losing battle within himself. And her body reacts by wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him closer. Then she feels it. Ichigo doesn't understand what is going on. He meant to only kiss her cheek like he does every night, but she tilted her head, exposing the soft skin of her neck. He feels something in his body pushing him even closer. He wets his lips with his tongue as he is slowly getting closer.
When he is merely an inch from her exposed throat, he manages to stop himself. Her scent is intoxicating. He tries to breathe in as much as he can through his ragged breathing.
His mind is slowly overcoming his body. He tries to fight the urges within him.
He feels as though he is winning when she wraps her arms around his neck and pulls him forward that last remaining inch.
And his lips touch. All thought goes out the window as his body presses his lips against the softest thing he has ever touched.
His hands go to her hips to pull her closer. He doesn't think about the fact her eyes aren't covered.
He breathes deep, inhaling all of her as his tongue leaves his mouth and tastes her.
The taste was like heaven. Her moans sent him over the edge. He began to crave the sound and taste of her and began licking and kissing up and down her neck. He could feel himself start to grow against her body. Her tight body being pressed against him was almost too much. He knew his hormones were taking control, so he fought with all his mind had to offer, and managed to wrestle control away from his body. He stopped his kisses and slowly pulled away from her, replacing his mask as quick as possible.
She couldn't help but moan. The entire sensation of having him this close with his lips against her, feeling him pull her against him.
She wanted more, needed more, so she pulled him closer. He was running his tongue up and down her neck, kissing over and over.
Never the same place twice. His scent filled her and her body began to move on its own, pulling him closer until there wasn't any space between them.
She arched her back, letting a low, deep-throated growl escape her lips. She could feel something hard rubbing against the lower part of her stomach. Her breathing was erratic and her eyes were closed, relishing in the sensations he was giving her. When she felt him stop, she tried to tell him, "Please.
Please, don't stop," but her lips wouldn't move. When he began to pull away from her, she tried to pull him back but felt that he wasn't going to stop. So she let up, and slowly opened her eyes. There he was standing in front of her, looking into her eyes. She could see a longing in their depths, a need that she wanted to fill. As he backed, his hands left her sides, and she couldn't help but let out a soft whimper. She let her own hands slip away, not taking her eyes off of him. He had finally regained control, but when she let out that little whimper he almost lost it again. He saw something in her eyes, something he had never seen before. Whatever it was, he liked it. He wanted to take off his mask and cover her entire body with kisses, but he kept control. He managed to tear his eyes away from hers and look to the side.
He tried to catch his breath and calm down his breathing so he could speak. Once he thought he was calmed down enough, he managed to huff out, "See you tomorrow night." It didn't come out the way it should, but he figured it was good enough. He turned to look at her one last time before he disappeared.
Rukia was still standing there looking at where he had just been a moment ago. She didn't understand this feeling, this longing. All she could do now was try to calm her body down. Her heart was thundering in her chest and her breathing wasn't anywhere near even. After several long moments she was able to calm her breathing. She finally turned and headed back to Urahara's.
As she was walking, she tried to suppress the smile and the deep red blush that was plastered on her face. When she got to Urahara's door, however, it wasn't as gone as she hoped it would be, for there stood Kion.
"What are you so happy about?" Kion asks. Rukia just runs into the house past Urahara and into the bathroom. "I'll wait until Kion is gone, then I will go into the room and sleep." "Yes, that is what I will do." She slowly lets her mind drift. That was amazing. She begins to notice the wetness between her legs, but it feels right, so she doesn't worry.
Kion turns to Urahara, who has a grin from ear to ear. "What's up with her? And why are you smiling like an idiot?" Urahara just continues to smile and drink his tea. Tessai walks up behind Kion and whispers, "Them hollows won't kill themselves."
She turns on him with rage in her eyes, "I know my job." And she stomps out of the house.
Once she is gone, Urahara says to Tessai, "Call Ishin. Have him meet me at the normal place this afternoon. We have something very interesting to discuss."
Ichigo couldn't sleep a wink. His hormones were going crazy and he couldn't get his mind off of the petite Shinigami girl who had plagued his thoughts for the better part of the last month. Especially after the wonderful incident last night. He knows he isn't supposed to be like this, especially with someone who is potentially dangerous to his family. After last night he can't help but want to kiss her lips more than her ever did before. He had to push those thoughts out of his mind. Nell was coming tonight to tell him of the recent events in Hueco Mundo.
He didn't much care about that though. She was one of his closest friends. Heck, they even called each other brother and sister. He owed her his life and she owed him hers. Most any time that she reverted back to her child form, she would come visit until her Reitsu returned.
That is how they met. He was about 5 when he first felt her in the park. She had reverted to her child form, and with him being so young, he didn't recognize the Reitsu as a hollow, so he followed it to this little pink-haired girl with part of a mask covering the top of her head. She was scared of him at first since she didn't have the power to protect herself, but Ichigo walked right up to her and asked her to play. Shortly after, his father came running up and pointed his Zanpakuto at her, screaming at Ichigo to get away from her.
Ichigo was immediately protective of his new friend and wouldn't budge. His mother came up and made his father relent when she saw how scared both the children were. His mother invited Nell to come to the house and she has been coming ever since.
They have been comrades since that day and he relied on her far more than he would have liked to admit, especially after the death of his mother.
They used to play together almost daily when he was growing up.
But with an upstart happening somewhere in the higher echelon of Hueco Mundo, she had to return, but she promised to visit on the 1st of each month. It was a day Ichigo always looked forward to. He couldn't wait to tell her all about this beautiful Shinigami and ask her about these urges he was having. He knew they were part of his anatomy, but it was still confusing since he has never had them before. He would much rather ask her than ask his father or cousins. Just the thought of them finding out made him shudder. He tried to fall asleep once again. He would have to break himself from the sleep all day up all night pattern he had established recently. School was just a month away. He began to think about showing the girl his face and telling her everything, and he slowly drifted off the sleep. It was near dusk when he awoke, so he ran downstairs looking for some food when he noticed his father wasn't around. Yuzu was in the kitchen by herself and he assumed Karen was out playing soccer with her friends.
"Yuzu, where is Dad?" Ichigo asked. Only cause it was strange, not that he really cared. I don't know, he has been gone all afternoon. The blonde-haired girl replied, never taking her eyes off the plate she was carrying. Here, eat up before you head out to see Nell. I made you some snacks to take with you for her. Let me know if she likes them or if she would prefer anything else. Yuzu. Ichigo said with a slight smile. You know she loves your cooking. She just doesn't come around that much because she is busy. You know what? I will ask her to visit the house the next time she gets the chance, okay? Yuzu nods with her famous smile and hands the bag of goodies to Ichigo. He runs up to his room and drops his body into the bed and flies out his window to where Nell would arrive.
Little did he realize, but his excitement at telling Nell about Rukia let some of Reitsu slip, just enough for a little Shinigami wearing a bracelet to follow.
Well, I think we should just let nature take its course. I can't wait until my idiot son brings home my third daughter. Isshin cries out with fake tears. Urahara chuckles. I am afraid that you don't understand, she is a noble. If your son so much as touches her, he can be put to death.
Kazuki, we are being hunted down and exterminated. There is only 10 of us left, counting me and my son. Thankfully my precious daughters weren't cursed with our inner demons. If we are found, we are killed, period. So what is wrong with Ichigo getting to know the beautiful Kuchiki heir? Besides, she might eventually have enough pull to get us off the kill on sight list, and she may be able to get you back into Sarate. Isshin says. As long as you are okay with this, then I will support it unless it becomes dangerous. I don't think your son has shown his face or told her what he is yet, but I can tell he is getting close. Those two has some sort of lethal attraction. I mean, they only started seeking each other a couple days ago and now neither of them can seem to stop thinking about one another. If they didn't have to sleep, I think they would be inseparable. Urahara states. It's that old Kurosaki charm. Isshin says proudly. Well, whatever it is, I hope he knows how to keep it in check. I can tell every time he gets too close to her, since his Reitsu control just plummets and I can feel it grow immensely, especially last night. It is as if he had no control whatsoever. Just remind him to be careful if he doesn't want to wear the bracelet again. Urahara says with his head in his hands.
I will when he gets back. He has gone off to see Nell. I can tell he misses her. They are like best friends, especially since he doesn't have to keep our little secret from her. Isshin laughs. Urahara shakes his head. I still to this day find it hard to believe that your son befriended an Urahara.
Rukia is just beginning her patrol when she feels Ichigo's Reitsu going in the opposite direction. She feels a longing for him and wants to follow, but doesn't want to invade his space. She wants him to open up when his is ready. She doesn't want to pry, but wants him to feel like he can trust her with anything. Why do I feel this way? I have barely met him and yet I have these strong feelings.
While she was thinking, a very powerful Reitsu just appeared directly where Ichigo was headed. She began running his direction, thinking about how she was going to explain it to him that she followed him.
She suddenly remembered the bracelet and slid it over her wrist. With that she ran with all her might, using what little shunpo skills she had to attempt to get close to him. She knew she was at least 10 minutes behind him, but she didn't care. She could still feel him and could feel that he was fighting cause his Reitsu was flowing all over. She could easily see it over the trees not far ahead of her.
Ichigo, I'm coming. What she saw when she came to a clearing was not what she expected at all.
Ichigo slashed at Nell, trying to get the upper hand. He knew he couldn't beat her without his Bankai form, but he still liked to try, and she always encouraged it, saying it will help make him stronger. He just did it cause he liked the challenge of tackling a superior opponent. When they met, they always went all out until one of them drew blood. At the first sign of blood they would stop. Unfortunately for Ichigo, Nell's skin was harder than that of a hollow, whereas his was soft. She could make him bleed with her fingernail if she poked him.
He couldn't stop thinking about Rukia, so that put him at an immediate disadvantage. Nell noticed this and went in for the strike. The slice on his arm signaled the end to the fight. Nell put her Zanpakuto away and went straight for the arm, applying a cloth to the wound to stop the bleeding. Being a hollow, she didn't have any healing Kito, so she always carried bandages when she fought with Ichigo. She hated it when he got hurt, but he always told her that it was the only way for him to get better. After the wound was bandaged, they sat and talked while eating the snacks Yuzu had made for them. So how is the family doing these days? Yuzu's cooking is getting better, Nell says.
The family is good. The cousins are still hiding. They come out every once in a while for food and somehow manage to make it to all special occasions. They had Kazuki make them some new charms that looked cooler, 'cause you know how they go out on the town. Ichigo says, and they both laugh. There is something different about you. You haven't stopped smiling since you got here. I know that smile isn't just because I came here to see you, so tell me, what has turned your frown upside down? Nell asks, giving an innocent pout at the end.
You know, I think you actually look scarier when you try to look cute than you do when you're angry. Ichigo laughs and Nell scoffs. At least I show my face, Nell shouts, ripping the mask off his face and tossing it out of Ichigo's reach. Hey, that wasn't fair. Nell cuts him off. There isn't anyone around and I haven't seen you in over a month. Don't I get to at least see the face of my little brother?
Little. There isn't anything on this body that is little, Ichigo says, chuckling.
Nell giggles back. That is true, at least from what I remember when we used to bathe together. Ichigo blushes a deep red. So now tell who put this smile on your face.
Ichigo tells her all about the beautiful Shinigami he has been following and about they met and started working together and about he got these animalistic urges when he was too close to her. Nell listened to it all without breaking in once, taking it all in so that when Ichigo asked her opinion she would be able to give it. Well, about the urges, it is only natural to have those urges. You are a very healthy young male, and if I didn't see you as my little brother I could teach you all about ways to relieve those urges, she says, giving him a seductive smile. Ichigo quickly looks away. Besides, how often do you have these urges? She asks.
Only when I am with Rukia, and the closer we are to each other, the stronger they become. I know she has them too, but I think she is like me and doesn't understand them. Ichigo says, looking down. Also, I am thinking about taking off my mask when I am with her and telling her everything. I feel drawn to her and that I can trust her with this secret. I don't want to hide things from her. Nell smiles. I don't think it is just the urges you have, but I think you might have a crush on the little Shinigami. Well, if you feel that you can trust her, then go ahead. I will come and meet her before you are allowed to start dating her, though. That is my right as a big sister. Besides, if she can deal with me, then she could definitely deal with your inner demon. Thanks, Nell. Can I still reach you the same way? Or do I need to get everyone to go there to find you again when I want you to meet her? Ichigo asks. Actually, I was planning to come back in a few days and eat some of Yuzu's delicious cooking. Let's say 3 days, bring her by then, or you can bring her with you when you send me off. I know you probably don't want her to meet the family just yet. Nell says when she sees the look of utter despair on his face. Don't worry. I will definitely be here to see you off. Is there anything special you want Yuzu to cook? Ichigo asks as Nell brings him in for a hug. No, little brother, anything will be fine. All her cooking is good. She says as she brings Ichigo in for a kiss on the cheek.
Now you take care of yourself and that wonderful little Shinigami you have. Don't tell her all your secrets though. Keep some for later, that way it keeps things spicy. Nell gathers up the remaining food as she steps into the Gurantarga an. I have no earthly idea how to spell this. It's that hole that hollows make to go back and forth between the human world and Hueco Mundo. Tell her more about yourself rather than your family history, she might get bored with that. Bye, little brother.
Bye, big sis, take care and don't forget that I still owe you one, he says, pointing to his injured arm. I am going to get you for this.
Nell smiles and waves, then the Gurantarga closes behind her and she is gone. Ichigo watches the hole close and gathers up all his things. The flashes off towards his house, still unaware of the little Shinigami that was sitting in the woods watching the whole night. Rukia couldn't believe what she was seeing. Ichigo was fighting an Urahara and he didn't look to be using his full strength, he seemed distracted. Just then the Urahara jumps forward and slashes Ichigo on the arm. Rukia was just about to jump out of the bushes when she saw the Urahara tending to the wound. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Not only was the fight over, but it seemed as though they were laughing.
I don't understand. A Shinigami and an Urahara not only worried about hurting one another, but they seem to be laughing. With that, Rukia turns off her thinking machine and tries to listen intently to their conversation. She doesn't understand much, just a few words here and there, like when the Urahara call Ichigo her little brother, and he calls her his big sister.
That would make sense due to the fact that he wears a mask. He must use that mask to cover up part of his hollow mask. No, he can't be an Urahara. I didn't let an Arankare touch me like that. Then she sees something she has never seen. The hollow girl pouts and looks at Ichigo. Ichigo laughs and the Arankare suddenly rips off his mask. Rukia covers her eyes, not wanting to see that Ichigo is indeed another Arankare. She decides that she has to know and slowly looks through her fingers. She sees a definitely human face with no mask pieces and a shock of orange hair. She is rather amazed at how good he looks. She tries to study his chiseled features but keeps finding her eyes drifting to that unkempt orange mop. She tries to focus on the scene unfolding in front of her but not before she burns the image of his face in her mind.
There is no mask, but why aren't they fighting? Then she sees Ichigo look down and she hears her name. Is he talking about me to this hollow? It seems he is asking her advice. Rukia tries to listen harder but is still only able to pick out a few words. Something about cousins and someone named Yuzu, and coming to visit in 3 days. Then she sees something else she never thought she would ever see. The Arankare hugs Ichigo and gives him a kiss on his cheek.
Rukia is experiencing another emotion that Urahara had mentioned, jealousy. She wanted to run out there and pummel that girl. Then she sees the portal open and the Arankare just walks inside waving goodbye to Ichigo. She watches as Ichigo gathers his things and leaves.
Rukia sits there in the bushes and tries to think this through, but she is coming up empty. She knows she will have to ask him but she doesn't know how. If she just comes out and asks, then that would immediately inform him that she was spying on him. So she would have to resort to waiting on him to come out and tell her. She snaps out of her thoughts when she notices her alarm is going off like crazy. She had put it on silent so she wouldn't get caught.
Damn, she thought, now I definitely got a long night ahead of me. When Ichigo returned home, he immediately went to his room and reclaimed his body.
He hurriedly rushed downstairs to tell Yuzu the news about Nell coming over to visit.
Yuzu was so excited that she began to plan the meal, and it wasn't going to be just any meal, it was going to be a feast. He smiles at Yuzu, who gets more excited over cooking than she does about summer break. Ichigo turns and heads back up to his room for some sleep. He was calm now that Nell had told that he should tell Rukia about himself. He just didn't know how she would take to Nell. After all, hollows and Shinigami are enemies, except Nell isn't a normal hollow or normal for Arankare. Her being a hollow is like some cruel joke played on her by the Spirit King. She has no recollection of her past before waking up as a hollow, so doesn't know what she did to deserve it. She just didn't think about it anymore. She says it was easier that way.
Rukia will like her, especially after I tell her what kind of person Nell is. He thought to himself. I am going to show her my face tomorrow. He brought up a picture in his mind of her perfect face and drifted off to sleep.
Rukia finally made it back to Urahara's. The sun was up and she was exhausted. She had killed 11 hollows and Kyon killed 9. Kyon had come out when she noticed that they were everywhere. She felt Rukia needed help, so she gave it. When Rukia finally entered the shop, she thought of going straight to bed, but when she saw Urahara, she walked over and sat down at the table, tossing the bracelet towards him. Here, take that back, she said. Oh, did you already use it? What did you find out? Anything important? Rukia was about to tell him everything, but she shut her mouth, deciding that Ichigo was going to tell her everything.
No, but I do have a question. Is it possible for a Shinigami and a hollow to become friends? She asks. I suppose so, it would just have to depend though.
I think I heard of it once. A female Shinigami ended up saving a young male Arankare from certain doom, and he swore his undying loyalty to her and swerved her until Soul Society came after them, so the Arankare quickly fled to Hueco Mundo as she told him. I believe she was imprisoned for a while before the Arankare came to attempt a rescue. They were both killed in the escape, Urahara said with a soft and sad-sounding voice. Why do you ask?
Oh, just curious, she lied. Well, good day, I'll see you later.
Rukia tossed and turned all day with nightmares of that Arankare devouring Ichigo's soul. Ichigo gets out of bed a little earlier than her expected. The sun was still high in the sky. He used this opportunity to call his cousin Shinji and try to bribe him to take over the hollows for the night. At first Shinji didn't agree, but when Ichigo mentioned Yuzu's cooking, he accepted. Ichigo then went downstairs toward the kitchen to find Yuzu pointing to a bag. There is a bag for you to take with you tonight. Now get out of my kitchen, I am making a masterpiece here. Yuzu said.
Thanks Yuzu, I owe you one, Ichigo said as he walked upstairs. He fell into his bed laying there thinking about Rukia was going to do when she saw him take off his mask tonight. Hopefully she wouldn't laugh at his orange hair and maybe just maybe her would get a kiss on the lips, maybe even get her to kiss him. Once it started to get dark, he left his body in his bed, grabbed the snacks and headed to his and Rukia's normal meeting place. He could feel his cousin Shinji leave the underground hideout going for the center of town to wait for any appearing hollows. When he got a little closer to where he would wait for Rukia, he noticed that she was already there waiting for him. He jumped down and asked, "Did you miss me?" "Yeah, something like that," she said stoically. He looked at her real carefully trying to gauge her. She was acting strange. "Rukia, is something wrong?" he asked trying to hide the concern in his voice. Rukia looked up at him and sighed. "Why do you hide your face?"
"Because I don't want people to see me and recognize who I am," he replies, looking away.
"So you don't want me to see what you look like?" she asks, not looking at him. "Well, actually," he says as he pulls his mask off his face, "I do." Rukia starts at that and turns to look at him. The first thing she notices is his eyes. They seem to have a worried feel to them. Then she steps closer to examine his face. Not even a single trace of a hollow mask. She reaches up and puts his face in her hands. His skin is soft, not like that of a hollow. He isn't an Urahara. She is looking at him so intensely she doesn't even notice his orange hair waving in the wind. She pulls him into a hug, thankful that he isn't an Urahara. She brings her lips to his ear and whispers, "I know you have secrets. I would like for you to share them with me." She feels him breathe into her ear, "You have to tell me yours too." Ichigo took Rukia down by a river where he sat with her in silence watching the moonlight. He made sure not to sit too close since his body was having those urges again. He wanted to wait until she came to him instead of him making the first move. He tried to think of a way to break the silence. He had many questions for her and he knew she had many more for him. He was feeling a little nervous. He had never really told anyone about his secrets other than Nell, and she was like family. But he had decided to tell Rukia everything she wanted to know unless she asked about the family history.
Rukia was the first to break the silence. "What is your full name?"
"Kurosaki Ichigo," he replied, not looking at her. "What division are you with and why are you in the human dimension?" she asks, looking at him. "I am not part of any division and I am here because I am part human. I was born here and I don't really want to leave," he says, feeling her eyes upon him.
"But you are a Shinigami, how can you not have a division?" she asks carefully, trying not to upset him.
"Well, I am not your average Shinigami, I am different. Everything I tell you about myself or my family, you must promise to keep it to yourself," he tells her with a serious tone.
"Why, what's the big?" Her hollow alarm starts to go off, so she stands but feels Ichigo pulling her back down. "Relax, it's taken care of."
The alarm stops so she sits back down. She looks at Ichigo, clearly confused. "What do you mean it is taken care of?"
"I bribed one of my cousins to watch the town tonight so we could talk without interruption," he tells her with a smile. "It was the cheapest bribe I've ever had to make. I just had to promise to bring him some of my sister's cooking for dinner for a week." He answered yes so loud and fast I dropped the phone. He finishes with a chuckle. He looks to Rukia and see that she has a slight smile creeping up on her face that she is trying to fight back down.
"You have family here? What about friends other than humans?" she asks, still trying to bring up the Urahara subject without him realizing.
Luckily Ichigo doesn't seem to notice. "Yes, my dad, 2 sisters, and my 8 cousins. They aren't really my cousins but I have known them since I was born and my dad has known them much longer than that."
Friends other than humans? Well, other than you I have Nell. She has been my friend since I was 5. I actually went to talk to her last night. She really wants to meet you when she comes back in 2 days and she even said, she has to get my approval before you can get to close. He finished trying to put on his best Nell voice. He purposefully forgot to tell her that Nell is an Urahara. Rukia can't help but smile at that last remark, although she is still thoroughly confused about the Urahara. "I think I would like that. To meet your family and your friend Nell. Why haven't you asked me about my family?" "They are in Soul Society, correct?" He looks to see her nod her head. "Then I can never have the possibility of meeting them, so I don't want to get too interested in something that isn't going to happen." "Why can't you go to Soul Society?" she asks. "I will have to let my father answer that one." You can ask him when you come to dinner in 2 days. He says, trying to avoid her question. Dinner. What makes you think I am going to dinner? She looks at him with a small glare for trying to tell her what to do.
Ichigo starts chuckling when he sees her face. You know you are cute even when you are angry. Well, if you don't want to come to dinner you don't have to. I just assumed you wanted answers and that is the best way to get them.
Fine, I'll go, she says, sitting back down. How long have you been here?
Almost 18 years, he says. Rukia turns on him and gawks.
What do you mean 18 years? She asks, thinking she caught him in a lie. I am almost 18. Remember I said that I was born here and I am part human. My mother was human and both of my sisters are, he says. Rukia closes her mouth and scoots closer to Ichigo, who hands her some of Yuzu's snacks. Tell me what you know about hollows.
Well, most of them eat souls, but there are a few who survive off of eating other hollows, and there are even a few who eat regular food like you and me. But not all hollows are bad. They didn't ask to be what they are. He tells her and she stares at him wide-eyed with her mouth wide open.
But you kill hollows. How can you kill something you don't think is worth killing? She asks, not believing what he just said.
I only kill hollows that threaten souls, my family, and my friends. He says the last part looking right into her eyes. Rukia just looks into his eyes, those perfect amber eyes, and she sees that he is serious. She feels that longing again and fights it to keep control of her body. She can feel the same longing coming from him, and that makes hers even worse. She tries to break contact but can't and finds herself moving closer. Ichigo can't look away from her violet eyes and feels himself drawn in. She is moving closer to him and he begins to panic. He manages to get control of his hands and he stops her and looks away. His breathing is ragged and the urges and desire are making him shudder. He quickly stands and continues talking.
Have you reached materialization yet? He asks, trying to calm himself. Rukia snaps out of it. Yes, but I haven't reached Bankai yet. The requirements she has put forth are rather difficult. Have you reached materialization?
Yes, I have even reached Bankai, but I try not to use it since it will draw Soul Society's interest. I don't have a regulator, so when I go to Bankai it is extremely noticeable. He says, I know I can help you with it and with flash steps while you're here.
She looks at him wide-eyed. I would like to see it, your Bankai I mean. And I could definitely use some help with my flash steps, she says softly.
Okay, but you have to wait until after the dinner. I will have to have Nell help me control my Reitsu. It tends to spill out when I don't use at least half my brain to focus on it. He says.
They continue to chat like this for the remainder of the night. Before they head back, Ichigo dons his mask and takes her to where he picked her up. As he is about to leave, she grabs his hand. Will you take your mask off for me? She asks very softly. He does and moves closer to her, placing his hands on her hips. She instinctively places her arms around his neck while they stare into one another's eyes. He moves closer, bring his lips to hers but stopping just short of them. She can feel his breath on her face and wonders why he stopped. She wanted him to kiss her so much that she couldn't control herself and her body pushed forward, causing their lips to touch.
When their lips touched, it sent an electric shock through Rukia, causing her eyes to close.
It ignited the fire in her lower regions and caused her pull him closer until their bodies were compressed against one another.
She didn't think they could get close enough. She felt his tongue against her lips and couldn't help but open her mouth. His tongue invades her mouth and quickly took over, running along her teeth and massaging her tongue. She let out a moan into his mouth, which seemed to kick his hands into motion. One hand moved to her lower back, pulling her closer, and the other had gone to the back of her head, pulling her into each kiss.
When he finally broke the kiss for air, he looked directly into her eyes. She saw caring, desire, and something more powerful, need. She pulled him back in for a rough kiss. Her need and his we going out of control. Ichigo tore his lips away from hers and went for her neck. Rukia arched her back, exposing more of her soft skin to him. The wetness between her legs was starting to run down her thighs. She softly said, yes, yes.
Ichigo could hardly control himself. He wanted to taste every part of her body, wanted to feel his skin against hers. He started to place his hand into her robe when he heard someone clear their throat.
Rukia heard it too and they quickly separated. Rukia turned away with a blush and Ichigo placed his hand on his Zanpakuto, ready to kill whoever interrupted them. When he looks, he sees Shinji.
What do you want? Ichigo bellowed. I am sorry but I had to come stop you. You see your Reitsu, Shinji said.
Ichigo tried to regain control and muffle it out as he noticed that he had lost all control over it. Damn, he muttered as he began hiding his Reitsu again. You don't think Dad? Oh yes, he noticed, as did everyone else. Kensai asked if you were fighting or just showing off for your little Shinigami. Shinji looks at Rukia with a wink and she immediately gets behind Ichigo. Ichigo looks at Rukia. Don't worry, he isn't going to do anything stupid. This is my cousin Shinji. He is, wait. How the hell did you know about her? Ichigo bellowed at Shinji, clearly furious. Shinji put his hands up in surrender. Your dad told us all about your nightly escapades. He kept running around yelling about how you were finally gonna become a man and give him the grandchildren he has always wanted.
Don't worry, I won't tell anyone what I found you two doing. Shinji starts to walk away, then stops, looking back at Ichigo. If you want to continue this little romance, I suggest that you come by and get a bracelet. Your Reitsu tonight might have been enough to catch the attention of someone upstairs. Then Shinji leans close to Ichigo's ear and whispers, I also suggest you tell her everything before you do any of that stuff. If you don't, it might hurt her when she finds out. And with that he flash steps and is gone.
Ichigo turns to Rukia, gives her a quick peck on the cheek and turns away. I'll see you tonight. Then he flashes her his best smile. He waits until she returns it and he disappears. Rukia walks into the house, immediately searching out Urahara. He is standing by the fridge pouring some milk into a saucer. His black cat seems to have a happy grin. Urahara. Rukia nearly yells, causing Urahara to drop the dish. The cat looks at Rukia and growls.
What can I do for you today, Ms. Kuchiki? Urahara asks, shaking slightly. He doesn't like it when girls are pissed off at him. I have questions that I must have answered right now. First, why do I have emotions and urges here that I have never experienced before? She demands. Well, that is easy. Sarate has a kind of spell cast on it that prevents these urges and emotions. In fact, it blocks out nearly all urges and emotions. Some emotions like love or hate often break through. As for desires and urges, well, those are squashed. He says, smiling. What is your next question?
How many of those bracelets did you make? She asks in an authoritative tone. Honestly, I am not sure. I made them long ago and have given many of them out to friends. He says over the lump in his throat. How many and which friends? She asks, shooting him a glare.
Urahara turns around, trying to ignore her glare, but he can feel her eyes burning his soul. Not many, about a dozen or so, and I don't remember all of their names. It has been quite a long time. Rukia realizes she isn't going to get a clear answer out of him, so she decides to ask her final question. She gulps and tries to hide her blush. What should I do about these urges? Urahara picks up, noticing her change. That is easy. Let your masked man help you with them. I am sure he will be able to help you with them. In fact, I am positive he wants to help you.
Rukia fixes him with a stare. How much do you know about Ichigo?
Not much, but from what Urahara looks down. She caught him. Why do I always let my tongue slip when girls ask questions? He looks at his cat and growls.
You were saying, Rukia says with her arms crossed, tapping her foot.
Urahara gulps and starts to run to the door. Oh, I forgot I have to run some errands. We'll get back to our conversation when I get back.
Urahara. But she was too late, he was out the door.
Ichigo was lying on his bed thinking about what Shinji had said when Yuzu appeared.
Ichine. What are you thinking about? She asked in her cutest voice.
Ichigo loved his sisters and was extremely protective of them. He tried to keep his life a secret from them, but they always got it out of him, and it was usually Yuzu that did. He hated it when she made that face. He couldn't lie to her, and it made him want to tell her everything just so she would smile.
I am thinking about the dinner tomorrow night. Would you be able to set a place for one more? Other than Nell? I will be bringing another guest along, Ichigo says. Yuzu's eyes widen and a smile blossoms on her face. Of Kurei Ichine. Is your other guest that girl that Dad was talking about?
Ichigo lets out a long sigh. Yes, she is. Her name is Rukia and she will be coming over. I am going to have Dad tell her everything, and I am going to have her and Nell meet.
Yuzu clenches her eyes shut and jumps for joy right on top of Ichigo. I am so happy for you, Ichigo. I can't wait to meet her. I will have to tell her all your favorite recipes, and of course I will have to tell her how to make sure you get up in the morning. She gets off him and continues talking as she heads out the door and down the hall.
Oh no, now I have to tell my dad. Ichigo groans. Maybe I should invite Shinji and the others. No, I better not. I think Nell and the family will be more than enough.
Ichigo and Rukia were running around killing hollows.
He made sure to not look at her eyes or get too close to her. His hormones would get the better of him and he couldn't risk going too far without her knowing everything. If they got too close before she found out what he was, then she might hate him and then she would probably turn them in once she found out they were being hunted. He still couldn't help but enjoy what she felt like against his back, and he could tell she was enjoying it too. She would grab him tight and take an extra moment getting off. And when he offered it to her again, she would immediately jump on without any hesitation. He could tell that she wanted to ask him something, and by the end of the night, his needs were making it difficult to control himself.
Rukia wanted to talk to him and ask him more questions, but she knew she would get all her answers tomorrow night at dinner.
She started worrying about what she was going to wear or what his family would think about her being a Shinigami and whether that Urahara would try to start something. She was also worried about the fact that Ichigo hadn't looked into her eyes once that night. He didn't stand very close to her. He still let her ride on his back and she was able to feel his hands inching back every now and then, going as far back as her butt before he realized it and moved them. When Ichigo dropped her off in the wee morning, she grabbed his hand and pulled him close.
Ichigo just stood there stiff as a board, trying not to look into her eyes. He knew what she wanted and he wanted it too. He just didn't think he would be able to stop once they started.
She puts both hands to his face and pulled him to her waiting lips. It was the most passionate kiss Ichigo had ever heard of. He had watched sappy love scenes in movies, but this was so much better. And luckily for him, she broke the kiss before he lost control. He stood there dazed while she looked up at him. He finally regained himself and took a quick look into her eyes. He had to look away quickly because they were enchanting him and pulling him forward.
He took a step back and said gruffly, "I will pick you up here at 6 this evening. And then we will go pick up Nell before heading to the house. I can't wait to see you tonight." Ichigo gave her his best smile and left before she could say anything.